Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The question is that vote tourism stand part of the schedule.
Mr. Chair.
The Honourable Todd McLean.
Mr. Chair, thank you. It gives me pleasure to take a call on this part of the debate on tourism. And the reason for that is tourism is so very important to our country. Indeed, Mr. Chairman, so important to our country that the Prime Minister himself decided to give it the honour it deserves and take on the responsibility for tourism. And it's very good news for all those who are involved in tourism in New Zealand, Mr. Speaker, because the government's commitment to tourism over the last 6 years is greater than any government ever before in this country. And Mr. Speaker, what does this mean for Kiwis on the ground in New Zealand? Well, it's very simple. It means a greater effort into the local economy, and it means more jobs. That's right, more jobs for New Zealanders in tourism. Mr. Speaker, the year to May of this year, there were almost 2.8 million visitors come to New Zealand, an increase of some 6%. And in part that's because of the great work that the sector has done, the very important work and commitment on the part of the government, but it's really about a new relationship where the tourism sector, businesses up and down New Zealand have joined with the government to put New Zealand's best foot forward and to promote the great things that we do here to the rest of the world. Now, I mentioned earlier what does this mean for the economy, and members opposite keep squealing about jobs. They're disappointed that job growth in New Zealand is on the way up and unemployment in New Zealand is on the way down. Well, during that same period of time, Mr. Chairman, up to May of 2014, that year up to May 2014, there was an increase of spending on the part of those visitors by 9%. That means more people coming, but spending more than they were before. And again, in every part of New Zealand, from our largest cities to our provinces, certainly to regional and rural New Zealand, that's really, really good news. Mr. Speaker, a quick note shows that over the last 6 years, the government has committed or spent $600 million on the promotion of tourism in New Zealand. And it's very important when one considers where those visitors are coming from and why they choose to come to New Zealand. So we know it's a beautiful country. We know that they have a great time when they're here. We know it's a safe country to visit under this government. But here's where it gets really interesting, Mr. Chairman. Do you remember those movies that were made in New Zealand that members opposite did not want to be made? Well, an increasing number of visitors to New Zealand, when they get off the plane, say that the reason they have decided to visit New Zealand with their families for a holiday to spend money here is because they've seen the Hobbit movies when they've been sitting at home in their own countries. And so, Mr. Speaker, that's a great way that the government has leveraged the use of taxpayer funding to support up to 5,000 jobs to be created in New Zealand as part of the film industry. But now more people are visiting New Zealand because they've seen films that feature New Zealand and they're staying for longer and spending money in all parts of our economy, which boosts jobs, grows jobs in our regions. Mr. Speaker, I want to pick on two parts as an example. The first is our traditional market. So the government in the budget last year committed $134 million extra to spend in a number of areas of tourism. And that's certainly to look at where growth and potential will come from in the future. So we committed $34 million to significantly expand focus on international business events. Very important for our cities particularly. $44.5 million has been allocated to attract visitors from emerging markets like India, like Indonesia and Latin America. Mr. Chairman, in next year, New Zealand will co-host some of the games with Australia for the Cricket World Cup, one of the largest sporting events that will be watched by people around the world. And we've agreed with Australia a border policy where for people, when they come from India, if they have a visa for Australia, they can travel to New Zealand without getting another visa to come and look at our country to watch these great games of cricket. Now that's going to be really very important for us, and it shows, Mr. Speaker, the government is focused on the future of where demand will grow in some of these countries that have a lot of interest in New Zealand. But we're also spending time and effort on focusing on existing markets of the USA, of the UK, and certainly of other parts of Europe. And here is a really interesting statistic, Mr. Chairman. Growth over the last 12 months of visitors from the US was 9%. But their spending was up by 55%. So 9% more of them came, but 55% more spent in our regions. Mr Chairman, the government is committed to tourism. The Prime Minister, as Minister, is doing more work in tourism than any other minister has done before. Our economic commitment is there. We've joined with the sector. It's only good news because it's about jobs, it's about the local economy, and it's our commitment to growing New Zealand.
The question is that vote tourism stand part of the schedules. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The question now is that vote finance stand part of the schedules.
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable David Parker.
Sorry, Mr Chairman. Mr Chairman, I